now my distinct privilege to call upon our Rabbi Akiva Mills.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's beautiful to see everyone here this morning. It's been an absolutely overwhelming weekend thus far. We thank everybody who participated to make this happen, both by being here. Your presence is so appreciated, as well as all that went on before this weekend in order to make this happen. Your involvement in one capacity or another truly made this special and truly helped us all come together. So a great big yasher koach, a great big thank you to each and every one of you who are here and many who aren't as well. Thank you. Before I start my remarks, I want to just recognize and thank Jonathan and Abby Kaplan. They wish they could be here, and they were supposed to have been here. They both put in an incredible amount of time and effort and resources into this project. Unfortunately, Jonathan's mother was not feeling well, and he had to go to Israel really at the last moment. And they wish they could be here. They're here in spirit. We obviously wish Jonathan's mom a refuah shalema. We're thinking of them from afar. I'll be honest with you, when this project began, as we all know, we're living in a very tumultuous, uncertain time right now. And by nature, I'm a very cautious person. The other members on this committee are not. And what can I say? I'm not the fellow who should be going to Vegas. Perhaps they are, but I'm not. And I think many of us have a thought in our heads, and I know that it was in my mind, and I'm sure it was in so many people's minds as well, is that with so much uncertainty in the world, with so much uncertainty in what's going on around us, was this really the time to embark on such a project, such an ambitious project? Wouldn't it have been easier to just hunker down, wait the storm out, and when everything finally returns to normal, whenever that may be, we'll regroup and begin this conversation all over again? I think there's many of us who may have had this thought running through our minds. And what hit me as I was preparing for this weekend is this is not by any stretch of the imagination the first times in the annals of Klal Yisrael, of the Jewish people, that such a dilemma has been faced. I want to share with you just one. I've collected many, but in the interest of time, I want to share with you just one. Close to 100 years ago, almost exactly, tough days, that would have been 1922, in Adar, in the spring of 1922, one of the greatest rabbis who was alive at that time, whose address was a central location for inquiries from all over the world. His name was Rabbi Chaim Ozer Brzezinski. Rabbi Chaim Ozer Brzezinski, Divrei Bracha, lived in Vilna, Lithuania. And Rabbi Chaim Ozer, Jews from all over the world consulted him with the weightiest halachic questions. In the spring, in Adar of 1922, Tafresh Pei Beis, he published his work that he is known and is studied to this very day. His Shelos and Chuvos, his responsive work called Achiezer. And in his introduction, he asks this question that was on everyone's mind. 1922 was a very tumultuous time in world history, and specifically in Jewish history. World War I had ended just a few years earlier. Jewish communities across Europe, which had stood for 1,000 years, were refugees. Everything was in a state of disarray and disorder. And during this time, he decided to publish his response. And his introduction, in his response, asks this very question. He says, I know, he starts off by saying, this is what's on the mind of everybody. Is this really the time to start producing works of Torah scholarship? Hello, Yishal Ashol, the questioner has the burning question. Am Yisrael Tovea B'yam Shel Demos. The Jewish people is drowning in a sea of tears. V'atem omrim shira, and now is the time to start singing and to start enjoying this work. And he continues and he says, absolutely. He says, Ulam Zekach Yisrael Saba Le'lo Kavod Torah. So this is the long-standing resilience that the Jewish people has always shown to God and to the Torah. In all generations, and in all times, in all eras. Even when the terrible sharp sword was resting on people's necks, the Torah of God, His divine Torah, that was the joy, that was the lifeblood of all members of Klal Yisrael. Even at the time of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, when the jeopardy of the Jewish people and of observance and totality of Torah study, everything hung in the balance, we didn't give up. And he goes on to say, at that time, at that very trying time, they built yeshivas. This is what we did at the most trying times. That's when we harnessed ourselves. We didn't wait until the storm passed. We said, right now is what we need to do. Right now is what we need to do whatever we can possibly do to strengthen ourselves and to encourage ourselves in respect to our Torah and to our observance. These are trying times. And in these trying times, this is exactly when it makes the most sense and when it's the most necessary to forge ahead, to dream and to make grand plans, to find ways to share more Torah with the world, to build buildings that are dedicated to Torah, to tefillah, to sincere prayer. So is this the right time? Was this the right time for our committees, for our shul, for our community to embark on this project? Was this the right time to start davening in this new shul? At a time of such uncertainty, I think it's very clear there's no time that's more appropriate to build, to bring more Torah, more tefillah, more sincere prayer, more Yiddishkeit into our world than now. With so much uncertainty, with such a lack of clarity, a loss of normalcy, there's nothing more soothing than the sense of stability that an enhanced makom tefillah, a place of prayer, and a makom Torah, a place where we can study Torah together, that it can possibly bring us. We're all familiar with the expression and with the saying of in Tanakh, Eitz Chaim Hi L'Machazikim Ba. The Torah is a tree of life for all those who grasp onto it. The Torah is our lifeline. If we ever needed to take hold of a lifeline, that reassuring lifeline, that only the Torah, the tefillah, sincere prayer, and mitzvahs can bring us, it's right now. As such, my friends, I think it's absolutely clear. There's no better time than now to welcome our new shul and its brand new Sefer Torah into our lives than right now. Yasher Kol. Two more points I want to make. I want to mention a Gemara. There's a very famous Gemara that closes the tractate of Sukkah. And I think it's very appropriate for this morning. And it's an appropriate way as we try to find some way to give voice to some of the feelings that I know so many of us have over the course of this weekend. The Gemara in Sukkah, and it's appropriate, it really relates to Maseches Tamid that we were learning together and we made a siyum on yesterday. The Gemara in Sukkah concludes by telling us about the Beis Bilga, that there was this one family of Kohanim who were known as the Bilga family. And the Gemara ends by telling us about the lechem hapanim, the showbread in the Beis HaMikdash was distributed every week on Shabbos to the outgoing mishmar, to the family of Kohanim as they left. And the Beis Bilga, all the descendants of this Bilga family, they were treated in a little bit of a second-class citizen fashion. They were given their showbread in a little bit of not the nicest place in the building. And there were other things. They're part of the sacrificial rites. There were different things that were done to them to make them feel like second-class citizens. That's what the Mishnah tells us. The Gemara says, what happened? Why was the Beis Bilga, the family of Bilga, treated this way? And the Gemara tells us that there was a daughter in the Bilga family. It says her name was Miriam from the house of Bilga. And she was an apostate. She completely left behind the Jewish people. And at the time of the Hanukkah story, she married one of the Yevanim, one of the Syrian Greek soldiers, probably an officer, someone of great prestige. And she did something absolutely blasphemous, something that was really sacrilegious. At the point when the Yevanim, when the Greeks had taken over the Beis HaMikdash, She came in, she went up onto the altar, started smacking it with her shoes, making all sorts of blasphemous remarks about God and how ridiculous in her perception all of the temple service was. And the Gemara says because of the way that she acted, that's why the entire family of this building family, they were now treated like second-class citizens. So the Gemara has a question. This was one misfit. This was just one girl in the family. Why are we treating the rest of the family in this fashion? And the Gemara says as follows. I'll read you the words. The Gemara says, Amar Abaye, Abaye says, it was perfectly appropriate to treat the entire family this way. Keda Amri Inshi, because there's a famous saying, Shusa Dianuka B'shuka, the way that a child speaks in public, in the shuk, in the market, Oda Avua, Oda Imeh. It's a reflection of either the thoughts that have been expressed at home by the father or the mother. When someone acts in such an outrageous fashion, so outrageous, it's impossible that they came up with this on their own. If they could feel comfortable in a public setting acting in such an outrageous fashion, it informs us that this child learned these lessons, that this was acceptable behavior in the home. That's what the Gemara ends with. And Rashi here concludes by telling us, ending on a positive note. And it says, this is why we say, Oy l'Rosh, oy l'Shneino, woes to the wicked, woes to their neighbors. But on the flip side, in the Mela, Tov l'Tzadik, Tov l'Shneino. How praiseworthy is it for the righteous and for the righteous one's neighbors to be the Tova Maruba? Because good is always excessive. Whatever we find about a bad character trait, what on the flip side, good is always so much more powerful. I think all of us this weekend have gotten some realization, and anyone who's been watching this building project move forward, everyone has seen the Herculean effort of Josh and Alana Kahan. And I was trying to think, what term could we use to describe those efforts? And it hit me when I was looking at this Gemara. I think we could say they're just outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. The amount of time, effort, resources, and the incredible scale of giving that they've poured into this project is nothing short of outrageous. And what this Gemara informs us is that when children act in such an outrageous fashion in public, that tells us they were taught that this is acceptable. Where did they get this idea that behaving, conducting themselves in such an outrageous fashion that we're all blown away by, how could this be acceptable? I think the answer is very clear. Their parents are probably scratching their heads. But somewhere or another in the course of their upbringing, in the course of their childhood, Dr. Joel and Joanna Kahan and Michael and Ricky Kropp must have made a powerful impression on them. Something at those Shabbos tables, something, the conversations in their homes, the lessons that they taught their children must have been incredibly impactful that could have encouraged them to have acted in such an outrageous fashion. So I think this is a tribute to your parents. And so much of what's going on here, and as you've seen in the Sefer Torah that was dedicated this morning in tribute to their parents, I think we have to thank them. We have to thank them. If we're seeing Josh and Alana acting, and have acted in such an outrageous fashion, it's because of the education and the upbringing that they received. And this is a credit to the Kahans, a credit to the Krupps. And the flip side of this is true as well. Just as that Gemara told us that Shusa Dianuka B'shuka, the way a child speaks in the market, the way they speak in public is Odavu Odimei, because of what they've learned is acceptable from the fathers or mothers. Josh and Alana, you can be absolutely certain that your children are watching. Each of your four precious children, whose names are here behind me on the parochas, Shayna, Aiden, Sarah, and Daniel, they're watching, they're observing, not just this weekend, but the Herculean efforts that you have expended on this project over the last year and change. They're watching, they are observing, they have seen your sleepless nights, they have seen the hours upon hours of the days that you have spent on this project, and you can rest assured that your actions are speaking far louder than your words in terms of the values that you hope to impart to your children. This project that you have spent, what you should realize, the chinuch that has gone into this Chanukah Sabayas, the training and the education of transmitting values to your family, nothing could possibly be stronger than the example that you have shown them in your efforts of this time. And to you again, we say, Yasher Koach. By just perhaps expressing a tefillah. So many of us, this is such an auspicious occasion, and so many of us are wondering, what can we possibly say as we enter our group-based tefillah that will always be known as the Kahin Sanctuary? What can we possibly say to give meaning, to give voice to some of the hopes and aspirations that we have? And the beautiful thing about Yiddishkeit is that we realize we don't have to start making up new tefillahs. Our ancestors have done such a wonderful job for us. And I don't know why, but in the weeks leading up to this, I started singing a tune in my head that came back to me. I don't know why. It's a concept. I don't know why this tune came back to me. Perhaps many of you are familiar with it, but I don't know why it popped into my head. I'll just sing the first bit. I'm not going to sing the whole thing. And I had to listen, where's this from? It's a beautiful heart. It's during the build-up to Tisha B'Av. I don't know why. It was in my head. And I thought, where is this coming from? And I realized there's a tefillah in all of our Siddurim. And it's right before we put on our talis in the morning. There's a beautiful tefillah. I don't know if any of us say it, but it's in there. It's a Kabbalistic tefillah. Let me just read the words. Through the mitzvah of tzitzis that we're about to put on our talis, Tinatzel nafshi, ruchi v'nishmasi. May my life force, my spirit, my soul, tefillasi, and my prayer, that it all be rescued. Tinatzel may be protected from external forces which are out to do damage to me. May this talis, may the tzitzis protect me. The tefillah goes on to say, V'yatzilein kinesher yayir kino. May it rescue them, my spirit, my prayers, like an eagle rousing its nest. Al goes love yirachev, fluttering over its eaglets. And that's a pasuk from Devarim that we're going to read in a couple of weeks in Azinu. A beautiful thought that we turn to our Kadosh Baruch Hu, we say, I'm about to put on my talis, and there's two aspirations that I have. Number one, it should shelter, it should protect us from these from these external forces that are seeking our demise. But number two, it should uplift us. Uplift us on the wings of eagles, protecting us, but also uplifting us. And I think that's our tefillah as we enter into our new shul. Our shul should serve in both of those capacities. It should protect us from the chitzonim. This should be a place where we come to seek refuge. When we're living in such a turbulent world and we're looking for stability, we should find the stability of the Torah through the tefillah, through the mitzvahs. We should find it here. This should be a shelter for us. But also that second idea that's in that tefillah, that this should be a place that elevates each and every one of us, our country Nisharim on the wings of eagles. It should elevate our tefillahs, it should elevate our prayers, that a beautiful makom tefillah like this can certainly do, and did over Shabbos. God will continue to do so. But not only should it elevate our tefillahs, our prayers, bringing them before the Kisei HaKavod, before God's heavenly throne, it should elevate each and every one of us as well. And that should be the purpose of this new shul, this new beautiful place, that, again, we should all be elevated. And God willing, we'll see this all come to fruition. And as we said Thursday night, this shul will be our vehicle to travel on the ultimate Kanfei Nisharim, the wings of eagle. When we look forward to the ultimate Chanukas Habayis, the ultimate dedication of God's house, the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash, in Hera B'Yameinu.